He was not a Jew, yet he was accepted by God.
Today our journey begins with the life of a man stands before the temple in Jerusalem. He watches the Jews entering, singing, worshipping, but he doesn't belong to that people. He wasn't born among them. He doesn't carry the blood of the covenant. And yet, something burns within him, a spiritual hunger that his old gods never satisfied. Today, you will discover the story of Proselyte, the one who he wasn't Jewish, but he was accepted by God. A figure almost invisible in biblical narratives, but one that reveals something profound about the heart of the Creator. Did you know that the law of Moses itself made room for foreigners? That God already had a plan to include the nations long before we imagine? And that there is a verse in the Old Testament that completely changes our understanding of who can approach the God of Israel? Stay until the end, because I'm going to show you something that many pastors don't teach. Conversion to the God of Israel did not begin in the New Testament. It was already there, hidden in the old pages, waiting to be revealed. And the question that everyone's asking is, what did this foreigner do to be accepted by God? There is something powerful about observing from afar that which you deeply desire, but which seems unattainable. That is exactly what happened to thousands of foreigners throughout the history of Israel. They saw a different people, a people who did not worship idols of stone and wood, a people who spoke of a single God, invisible but real. And while the surrounding nations offered their children to Moloch, while they prostrated themselves before mute statues, some of these foreigners perceived something extraordinary. There was power in the spiritual identity of that people. It was not just culture, it was not just tradition, it was divine presence. But the big question arises, how a non-Jew in biblical history could someone be a part of that? How could an outsider cross the invisible line that separated the chosen ones from the rest? The answer wasn't in the blood, it wasn't in the lineage, it was in something much deeper. Because look, God was never a prisoner of a single ethnicity. He chose Israel, yes, but he never said that he belonged only to Israel. And that changes everything. That opens a door that many thought was closed. So tell me, what would make you abandon everything you know to seek a God you've never seen? The hot desert wind beats against his face as he walks. His feet kick up dust in the streets of Jerusalem. He hears Hebrew being spoken around him, a language he is still learning. His clothes are different, his accent foreign, but his heart beats in the same rhythm as those born under the covenant. He is called Proselyte. In the Greek language will be settled, the one who approached, the one who came from afar. A simple term, but loaded with a profound meaning that most people have never stopped to understand. When we talk about who were the proselytes, we are talking about men and women who have made the most radical decision of their lives. They didn't just change religion, they changed their identity. They abandoned their ancestral gods, their customs, often even their families. Because the proselyte in the Bible, he wasn't someone who simply sympathized with the God of Israel. He was someone who surrendered himself completely to him. And here's what's fascinating. This term appears in the Greek scriptures of the Old Testament, showing that this figure existed long before Jesus walked through Galilee. Proselyte, biblical meaning. It goes beyond a religious conversion. It's about total transformation. It's about choosing to die to an old world and be born into a new spiritual reality. But what exactly did this foreigner need to do to become part of God's people? The journey of a Gentile convert in the Old Testament, it didn't begin with a ritual. It began with a conviction, an inner certainty that the God of Israel was the only true God. And that conviction had to be strong enough to make him turn his back on everything. Think about the risk. You lived in a pagan city. Your family had worshipped other gods for generations. Your friends, your neighbors, everyone followed ancestral traditions. And then you declare, I will follow the God of the Jews. Do you think that was accepted calmly? Not at all. You were choosing isolation, rejection, sometimes even persecution. But the call was stronger. A conversion to the God of Israel. It wasn't a social decision. It was a spiritual one. It was a real encounter with the truth that set you free. And when that truth reaches you, you can no longer live as before. It's impossible. The conversion process involved several steps. The foreigner needed to commit to the law of Moses. If male, he needed to undergo circumcision, an act of covenant that marked his body as a sign of belonging. Then there was ritual baptism, purification, and then the sacrifice in the temple. Each step was a declaration, I am no longer who I was. That biblical story of conversion, this shows us something revolutionary. God has always accepted those who sought him with a sincere heart, regardless of their origin. The door was open. The question was, who would have the courage to walk through it? And the most incredible thing is that the law itself already foresaw this. Here's something that many people don't know. The Mosaic law and foreigners. They had a much more welcoming relationship than we imagine. We're not talking about passive tolerance. We're talking about deliberate inclusion written into God's own law. In Exodus 12:48-49, it is written, But if a foreigner sojourns among you and wants to celebrate the Passover to the Lord, every male among you must be circumcised. Then he may come near and celebrate it. He will be like a native-born citizen. No uncircumcised person may eat of it. The same law applies to the native-born and to the foreigner who sojourns among you. Do you see the same law? A foreigner who converted had the same rights and the same obligations. This was not a favor. It was a right guaranteed by God. Foreigners among God's people, they were not second-class citizens. When they embraced the alliance, they were treated as equals. They could offer sacrifices. They could participate in sacred festivals. They could inherit blessings. Leviticus 19:34 goes even further. The foreigner residing among you must be treated as your native-born. Love them as yourself. It wasn't just legal acceptance, it was love, it was dignity, it was full recognition of humanity and spiritual worth. And since we're talking about something so important, let me extend a quick invitation to you. If you're enjoying this content and want to continue discovering profound biblical truths, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. This helps a lot and motivates me to bring you more stories like this. So the law didn't close doors, it opened paths. And this reveals something fundamental about God's character. He always had a heart for all nations. Israel's exclusivity was a calling, not a selfish privilege. They were chosen to be a light to the Gentiles, not to hide the light. But how did this work in practice? How was a foreigner actually accepted? This is the part that breaks down all religious barriers. A foreigner accepted by God, he didn't need Jewish DNA. He didn't need to prove Abrahamic ancestry. He didn't need any ethnic credentials. What he needed was genuine faith and sincere obedience. Think about it. The covenant with Abraham was based on what? Faith. Romans 4 makes this crystal clear. Abraham believed God, and it was credited to him as righteousness. So the principle has always been the same, faith beyond Jewish lineage. It has always had value in the eyes of God. The proselyte demonstrated this faith through concrete actions. He abandoned idols. He kept the Sabbath. He followed the commandments. He participated in the feasts. He offered sacrifices. And God looked at that transformed heart and said, "This is my son. This is my daughter." Deuteronomy 10:17-19 declares something powerful. For the Lord your God is God of gods and Lord of lords, the great, mighty, and awesome God, who shows no partiality and accepts no bribes. He defends the cause of the fatherless and the widow, and loves the foreigner residing among you, giving them food and clothing. Igodor, the foreigner, he doesn't just tolerate him, he loves him. And when we talk about accepted by God, even though he was a Gentile, we are talking about a reality that confronts all kinds of religious prejudice. It doesn't matter where you came from. What matters is where you are going. It doesn't matter who your parents were. What matters is who you choose to be before God. And biblical history is full of examples of this. You Gentiles in the Bible, these are not rare exceptions. They are prophetic signs scattered throughout the sacred narrative, showing that God's plan has always been greater than a single nation. Let's look at some examples that will surprise you. Rahab, the prostitute of Jericho, a Canaanite, a woman who lived in sin in a city condemned to destruction. But when the Israelite spies arrived, she made a declaration of faith that changed everything. For the Lord your God is God in heaven above and on the earth below. Joshua 2:11. She believed. And because of that faith, she was saved, integrated into God's people, and even entered the lineage of the Messiah. It's there in Matthew 1, Ruth, the Moabite. The Moabite women were descendants of an incestuous relationship. They were despised. But Ruth made a conscious choice to convert. Your people will be my people, and your God my God. Ruth 1:16. And she also ended up in the genealogy of Jesus, a Gentile convert, great-grandmother of King David. And what about the Roman centurion in Matthew 8? Jesus said of him, "Truly I tell you, I have not found anyone in Israel with such great faith." A Roman, an occupier, someone who wasn't even a formal proselyte, but he had genuine faith, and Jesus publicly exalted him. These examples show that inclusion of Gentiles in the faith clearly. These were not accidents. They were living demonstrations that God never limited his grace to a single ethnic group. He always looked at the heart. And this leads us to an even deeper truth about the character of God. There is a verse in Acts 10:34-35 that sums it all up. Then Peter began to speak. I now realize how true it is that God does not show favoritism, but accepts from every nation the one who fears him and does what is right. God does not show favoritism. This is not a new idea from the New Testament. It is a progressive revelation that was already in the subtext of the Old Testament, waiting to be fully understood. God's grace for all peoples, it was always part of the plan. When God called Abraham in Genesis 12, he said, "In you all the families of the earth shall be blessed." All. Not just Abraham's biological descendants. All families, all nations. That was the promise from the beginning. The problem was never God. The problem was the human heart that builds walls where God wants to build bridges, that creates hierarchies where God sees equality, that separates by ethnicity when God unites through faith. And this happened in Israel, and it still happens today in many churches. But God's grace cannot be confined by our limitations. It overflows, it reaches out, it transforms, it breaks down cultural, religious, social, and ethnic barriers. Because God's love is universal, and his offer of salvation is for all who approach him with a sincere heart. The proselyte was living proof of this. A foreigner who became a son, a Gentile who became an heir, a transformation that only grace could bring about. But this grace demanded a response. There is a difference between admiring God from afar and committing to him up close. Obedience and faith of the foreigner, they weren't two separate things. They were one and the same. Because true faith always produces obedience. Always. When a Gentile became a proselyte, he wasn't just changing religions. He was changing his life. Everything changed. His diet, because now he followed the laws of purity. His calendar, because now he observed the Sabbath and the holy festivals. His relationships, because now he was connected to a community of faith. His purpose, because now he lived for the glory of the God of Israel. That's it, true faith in the Old Testament. It wasn't just mentally agreeing that Yahweh was the true God. It was surrendering one's entire life to him. It was a total surrender, not a partial one. And God honored that. He saw the willing heart and responded with complete acceptance. James 2:26 says, "For as the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without works is dead also." This has always been true. The proselyte understood this in practice. His faith manifested itself in real decisions. in concrete sacrifices, in visible changes. And here is the challenge for us today. Does our faith produce obedience? Are we willing to change everything for God's sake? Or do we want a comfortable faith, one that costs us nothing and transforms nothing? Because in the end, it was all part of a much bigger plan. Now we come to what matters most. Everything we have seen so far leads us to a revelation that completely changes our understanding of the Bible. From the beginning, there was a God's plan for the nations. Israel was never the end. Israel was the means. Isaiah 49:6 prophetically declares, he says, "It is too small a thing for you to be my servant, to restore the tribes of Jacob and bring back the remnant of Israel. I will also make you a light for the Gentiles, that you may bring my salvation to the ends of the earth." Salvation to the ends of the earth, to all nations. A salvation for foreigners. It wasn't a plan B. It was the plan from the beginning. God chose Israel to be the bearer of revelation, the people through whom the Messiah would come. But the intention was always that this light would reach all peoples. The proselyte was a foretaste of this reality. Each Gentile who converted was a small demonstration of what was to come. A kingdom where Jews and Gentiles would worship together. A spiritual family that would transcend all natural barriers. And when Jesus came, he didn't undo that. He fulfilled it. He expanded it. He made accessible to all what previously required a formal conversion process. Ephesians 2:14 says, "For he himself is our peace, who has made the two groups one and has destroyed the barrier, the dividing wall of hostility." The cross brought down the wall. But the wall should never have been so high, because since Genesis, God has been opening paths so that all could come to him. And that call continues to resonate today. The story of the proselyte is not just ancient history. It is fulfilled prophecy. It is present reality. It is a permanent invitation, because the universal call of God has never ceased. It continues to resonate in every generation, in every nation, in every heart that listens. You who are watching now, it doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter what your parents' religion was, what the color of your skin is, what your past is. If you feel this calling, if you feel this spiritual hunger, you can answer, you can draw closer, you can be accepted. Revelation 7:9 gives us a glimpse of the future. "After this I looked, and there before me was a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation, tribe, people, and language, standing before the throne and before the Lamb." Inclusion of Gentiles in the faith, it reached its peak. All nations, all peoples, and you are part of this story. If you believe, if you surrender, if you obey, you are not a stranger. You are a son. You are a daughter. You are an heir to the promises made to Abraham, because in Christ the barriers have finally fallen. The proselyte had to go through rituals, ceremonies, formal processes, but today all you need is faith in Jesus Christ, genuine repentance, a transformed life, and the promise is the same. You will be accepted fully, unconditionally, forever. So let me ask you again, what would make you abandon everything to seek God? For the proselyte, the answer was obvious. Because he had found something worth more than everything he had left behind. And you, have you found it yet? If this story touched your heart, if you understood that God has always had room for outsiders, for foreigners, for those who don't fit in, then let this transform your life today. The God who accepted the proselyte in the Old Testament is the same God who accepts you now through Jesus Christ. Don't miss this opportunity. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any videos about these profound biblical truths. Like and share if this content has built your faith. And comment below, which part of this story impacted you the most? Let's talk about it. Share this video with someone who needs to know that God does not show favoritism, that God's grace is for all people, and that no matter where you come from, you can be accepted by Him. This message needs to reach more people. And remember, the universal call of God, this is not theory. It's a real invitation. It's an open door. It's unconditional love awaiting your response. The proselyte responded. Gentiles throughout history have responded, and now it's your turn. May the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God who has always loved all nations, richly bless you. And may you never again feel left out, because in Christ you are included. You are part of the family. You are a son. You are a daughter. Until the next video, may the peace of the Lord be with you.